Looking at the bed, Haru was horrified. Pressing her hand to her mouth, she collapsed to the floor. Oh Han Cheol, Haru and Taeshik walked into the room. They looked fearfully at the bed with the patient. Taeshik asked, "Who else is it?" exclaiming that it wasn't Hanul. Haru collapsed to the floor. Turning to the judge, Taeshik asked, "What's going on there and why is this guy here?" He wanted to clarify after all. The judge had said that their friend was bleeding heavily. The judge calmly replied that he didn't say it was their friend. Taeshik and Han Cheol's faces showed their shocked state. The judge continued his story again, that when the monster guy pounced on Gang Han Chul, the guy started coughing up blood and lost consciousness. Taeshik asked what the judge thought, that it was because of Gang Hanul's punch. The doctor, fixing his glasses, said that it wasn't because of the punch, but it was all because of the overdose of doping. The boys said the words the doctor told them in surprise. Han Cheol said thoughtfully, "That's it. That's what this strange feeling is about." The doctor said that he couldn't understand why he had to take so much. He was taking Veta-2 steroids, peptides, and more doping internally. A normal person is not able to endure something like that. Haru immediately stopped and asked, "What about Gang Hanul, and what happened to him?" The dark figure watched the people talking in the chamber, then she abruptly ran. She ran into the stairwell. The man with the long hair told the man with the serious features that he had snuck in to find out what had happened after the blackout. He continued that if number 3 found out that Gang Hanul had won the match, he wouldn't just let them go. The man next to him said that they shouldn't be so worried. They should lay low until things settle down. The man with long hair looked at him questioningly and asked him, had he thought of something yet? The man with serious features replied smugly that things would be much easier if Gang Hanul just couldn't participate in the next match. The man anxiously appealed to the boss that the big boss would definitely kill them if they touched this guy. The boss called him an idiot and told him why he thought he would personally handle the matter. Suddenly his phone rang. Picking it up, he said that there were people who were more bothered by the guy than he was. The man then said hello and told him to listen carefully, to go to the address he had just discounted to him and teach the guy a lesson. This is a chance to make those assholes from the Gang Han group swallow dust. The man with long hair then asked the boss that he wasn't going to use that traitor. On the table, a white phone with the call, Gang Khan Group number 2 inches displayed on it. The man in the patterned jacket was looking at the phone snidely with his hands folded in front of him. The sun was setting over the horizon. The guys were waiting at the edge of the roadway. Haru was in doubt, saying that there was still something wrong here. Taeshik wanted to clarify what it was. Haru said that this doping incident didn't seem like a coincidence. Han Cheol asked if she meant that there was someone who didn't want Gang Hanul to win. Taeshik opened his mouth and shouted excitedly, "What should they do? Now Hanul is all alone without any defense." Haru picked up the phone and in an orderly tone told the guys to call everyone they knew first, and she would call the police. Han Cheol angrily said that this was all bad, and if someone really wanted to hurt Gang Hanul, they had already started to act. Some of them were indignant. Where's the cab when they need it so badly, since they only hope they can get to Hanyul first? A mirrored building with a bright orange sunset reflecting on it. The platform on which Hanul lay was bloody, but the guy was still lying motionless. Someone was watching him through the glass in the door. The person reached for the doorknob, opened the door, and walked in. It was the Seyoung-ha girl. She was wearing a striped shirt and a short haircut. While still standing in the doorway, Seyoung-ha hears a crowd of fleeing thugs in the distance, clearly heading toward the hall where Hanul lay helplessly. She quickly closes the door, frantically decides to lock the door, struggles to move the dumbbell rack and succeeds in locking the handle. The noise makes Hanul, who was lying on the floor, start to come to his senses. When he opens his eyes, he feels that his head is just splitting. He can't even move from his seat. Hanul does not realize what is happening and how long he has been unconscious. But his thoughts are interrupted by the bandits talking. They realize that the door is blocked, and after outrages, an order to kick the door is heard. Their shouts and threats to open the door continue, but Seyoung-ha still held the dumbbell rack and wouldn't let them in. Hanul ponders who the man at the door is and fights with himself not to pass out, but he fails. Suddenly, he feels someone grab his shoulder and opens his eyes. A yellow cab is rushing down the city street. Taeshik, Han Cheol, and Haru are sitting in it. Taeshik, worried about his friend, shouts from the back seat at the elderly cab driver to go faster. The driver indignantly replies that he's already driving at the speed limit. Haru, who is also sitting in the back seat and fumbling through her phone in her hands, mumbles her worries about Hanyul. Suddenly, the phone in her hand starts ringing. It was on. She asks him if he found Hanul, listens to his answer carefully and hangs up without answering anything. The guys who were patiently waiting for her to finish the call became even more worried and asked her what was wrong. She ignores their questions and asks the driver to take them to Cheongsong Hospital. Sunset, the tall and glassy building of Cheongsong Hospital. In the hallway at the window, Haru and Hanul, dressed in hospital clothes, stand opposite each other. Hanul starts apologizing to the girl, saying he knows how busy she is. She tells him not to worry about it and starts asking him if anything happened, if any strange people attacked him. He replies that he heard strange voices, assumes they were thugs, but he couldn't move a finger, and when he woke up there were 3 guys in uniform standing over him, apparently ambulances, and he was taken to the hospital. But now he can't remember if the bandits were actually there, or if he just heard them. Haru tells him not to leave the hospital just in case, and that the doctor said it will take time for him to fully recover. Then she looks at her phone and says that Tae-shik is running late. Hanul wonders what Tae-shik has to do with this. Haru explains to him that Tae-shik got up and left without saying anything as soon as he heard that Hanul was okay, but he promised to be at the hospital by 8 p.m. Hanul tells her that she can go if she has things to do, as there is no need to sit in the hospital and look after him. But she turns him down, saying she can't because she's too worried about him. It's already dark. Tae-shik walks down a narrow city street looking at his phone. He mumbles to himself that Sunghwa will read his messages sooner or later, where he told her to send a man to the address he himself had sent her earlier, because Hanul is in danger. Afterward, he texts her that he has something to tell her. He continues walking confidently down the street to tell Sangha something. But suddenly he sees someone and starts running away in fear and hides around the corner between 2 buildings. Sweating profusely with frightened eyes and frozen breath, he waits for the man to pass, then clutches his head and stammering with fear asks himself why Gangdae Chung is here. Still holding his head in panic and fear, Tae-shik continues to think out loud. He doesn't know what he should do. He assumes that Gangdae Chun is looking for Se-young-ha, and he wouldn't let it go that easily. Tae-shik decides to inform the girl and, hands trembling with fear, pulls out his phone to call her, but she doesn't pick up despite all his pleas. He's angry about this, but decides to tell Hanul at least. As he huddles against the wall of the building, he hopes Hanul will pick up the phone. Night, Cheongsong Hospital. Hanul's phone rings on the nightstand, and there's an incoming call from Tae-shik, but Hanul himself is asleep in the oxygen capsule and can't hear it. Tae-shik continues to run fast through the alleys with tears in his eyes, not understanding why no one is picking up the phone. He rushed to Se-young-ha's house because he called the police to her address, and he's afraid they'll leave if they don't see anything suspicious. He thinks that if Gangdae Chun is really with Se-young-ha, there's nothing he can do, so he wants to find her first. Se-young-ha walks quietly through the dark alleys of the city. Tae-shik sees her in the distance and is happy that he finally found her. Suddenly he sees a man dressed in dark clothes come around the corner. Scared, Tae-shik presses himself against the wall without making a sound so as not to attract his attention, but the phone in his hand starts ringing and he quickly tries to turn it off with trembling hands. After dealing with his phone, he looks out from around the corner and sees that there is no Se-young-hee or the man on the alley. He hears someone saying his name, as it turned out to be the sound from his phone. It was Hanul asking him about the day he passed out and if he saved Se-young-ha at that moment. He also asked Tae-shik what his message about Gangdae Chun showing up next to Se-young-ha meant. Hanul, hearing this, ran out of the hospital barefoot and in his hospital clothes. He ran in sweat down a night street with a bunch of glowing signs shouting, "Please," but stumbled in the middle of the road while saying Se-young-hee's name. The girl was cornered. She was sitting on the ground and trembling with fear. Gangdae Chun stood over her. He apologized for being late, making excuses for being busy. He pulled on a wicked grin and admitted to her that he had been thinking about her a lot since the day she had slipped away from him, and now he would like to pick up where they left off last time, and with a devilish grin he approached her, holding out his filthy hands. Se-young-ha began to scream. Someone grabbed Gangdae Chun's arm, thus stopping him. It was On. He looked silently at Gangdae Chun, still holding his hand, and asked Se-young-hoo, who was shaking with fear, if she was all right. She replied that she was fine and that he had nothing to worry about. Dae-chun smirks evilly again and starts fighting with the guy, asking the girl why there are always losers hanging around her. He asks her to watch carefully as he turns this guy, just like Hanul, into a vegetable and throws another punch at him. But unexpectedly, this guy stops sitting back and strikes him back in the back of the head with all his might. An hoped his punch worked, because his knee was still injured from the tournament. Gang Dai-chun grabbed his arm, glaring at him with fierce eyes, and swung right at the guy's face, but he managed to put his hand up to defend himself. Watching all of this was Se-young-ha, who was yelling and worried about An. An realized that this was going to be a tough fight, but he wanted to take care of Se-young-ha's safety first. He kicked Gang Dae-chun in the shoulder so that he flew off and hit the wall of the building, then pounced on him, pinning him against the wall and shouting to Se-young-ha to run away from there faster. She wanted to get up, but she couldn't move because her legs were shaking with fear. Tears were pouring down her cheeks in hail. She tried to pull herself together. After all, she has to move to save herself. She started to crawl when she was near him. An warned her that his knees were starting to give out, so she needed to hurry up and get out of there. Gang Dae-chun smiled again and started pushing An away and freeing himself from his grip. He asked Se-young-ha where she was going because he wouldn't let her go until they had some fun together. After saying that, he turned his attention back to Anna. Realizing that his knees were his weak spot, he mockingly asked him if they hurt. He kicked him and Anna's back hit the wall. Anna's legs wouldn't listen to him. He couldn't move. Gang Dae-chun took advantage of his immobility and kicked him in the knee, and he cried out loudly in pain. The boy was lying on the ground. His knee was bent backwards, and he was writhing in pain and grunting. At this time, Gang Dae-chun turned to Se-young-ha again. He asked her where she was going, and offered to play with a sinister smile on his face, holding out his hands to her. But he was stopped by An, who wouldn't give up even while lying on the ground with a mangled leg. He clung to Gang Dae-chung's shoe and would not let go. An's persistence surprised Dae-chung, and he just didn't understand why he would go so far for some girl. To his question, Gang An replied smilingly that he couldn't just dump the girl. After all, he finally why she had blown him off as many as 10 times. Gang Dae-chun asked him with even more surprise, was he really willing to become an invalid for the sake of a girl? But he never got an answer. Instead, An once again told Se-young-ha to run faster. Dae-chun started kicking him in the head, but An never let him go. He decided to break something else in hopes that his leg would be released, and continued stomping on An's arms. It was useless because he was screaming, but he wouldn't give up. Gang Dae-chun said that he had already re-educated the girl in his own way, so she wouldn't be able to ignore his commands. He lashed out at her again, saying they wasted too much time on her friend and asked her to go easy on him. Gang An didn't give up and bit his opponent's leg that he cried out in sudden pain. Dae-chun looked toward the bricks lying around and without thinking, he grabbed one of them and swung to teach the guy a lesson for biting him. He once again marveled at the guy's action and what he was willing to do for a girl who couldn't even run away. He was stopped by Se-young-ha, who finally had the courage to get to her feet. She grabbed a wooden stick and broke it against Dae-chun's back. Gang An watched this lying on the ground and wished his opponent would just pass out, but Gang Dae-chun continued to stand on his feet and leaned on the wall with his hand. In shouted to his friend to run again. Gang Hanul ran in his hospital uniform down the alley. Mentally, he hoped she was all right. He thought he couldn't be late no matter what. He had to catch up with Gang Dae-chun. He was running barefoot, so his feet were bloody, and he shouted Se-young-he's name. There was a lantern on a power line pole that illuminated the dark alleyway. Gang Dae-chun grabbed Se-young-hui by the hair, but the guy still lay there and didn't move. Swinging at the girl, Gang Dae-chun shouted that they were two fools for deciding to die together. With a bang, the girl fell to the ground. Moonbeams barely passing through the clouds, Hanul was approaching the place. He was in such a hurry he said he could swear he heard something from there. He stopped, but there was no one in that alley. Then he exclaimed, "Why can't he find them?" Sounds were heard behind him. He turned around and realized that's where the sounds were coming from. He ran so fast that he stopped and braked with his bare feet. Someone was talking. Hanul stopped in a sweat and looked at the people. Then he said, "You." It was Tae-shik. He said that he made it in time, that he could barely scare Gang Dae-hoon away with his whistle. Hanul excitedly asked what about Se-young-hee and if she was okay. Tae-shik nodded affirmatively, adjusting his glasses, and said that luckily her breathing and pulse were fine. He had already called 911, and they should be here soon. Gritting his teeth, Gang Hanul slammed his fist on the ground. He was furious. It smelled like smoke. He asked where that bastard Gang Dae-chun was and ran in the opposite direction. Someone shouted Gang Han-yul's name to stop. Hanul stopped abruptly and looked questioningly in the direction the voice came from. He was lying on the ground, his leg broken and breathing heavily. Hanul recognized Gang An and asked him what he was doing here. Gang-on said that Gang Dae-chun was not someone he could defeat alone, and that Hanul should not forget his condition. Hanul looked at Gang-on ominously, as if in anticipation of what he was going to do next.